Welcome back to Take It or Heave It. I'm Wes Soltis. This is Ryan, editors at HEAVEmedia.com.
Okay, and our question of the day is, what do you think would be the worst way to die?
Okay, well, as we were driving here, I saw a porta potty on the side of the road.
On Lakeshore Drive.
On Lakeshore Drive, which is bizarre to begin with, because I don't know who would use a porta potty like that. But I think the worst way to go would you being in that porta potty, probably going number 2, and getting hit by a semi. So then you're, all stuff's flying everywhere, and you're dead. Which, that's embarrassing.
Yeah, that would suck.
Embarrassing. How about you?
That would make a good obituary. I think the worst way to die would be if you were crossing the street and you got hit by the ambulance. Because let's say that the massive internal bleeding didn't kill you, the irony would.
The irony would kill you.
So.
And you would technically be killing like 2 people because that ambulance would stop and then they wouldn't make it to the other person.
Yeah, then they'd have to send another ambulance, which would probably crash into the second ambulance, and it would be a big problem.
Yeah, mine's more embarrassing though.
No, you suck.
First album we're going to look at is Conor Oberst with a self-titled release. It's out on August 5th on Merge Records.
Oberst recorded this first self-titled album in just under 2 months while he was vacationing in Mexico. And in Espanol, that would be muy pronto.
What Oberst delivers on the self-titled release is less whine and more of an acceptance as some sort of musical troubadour. He's always been a great songwriter, but he took out all the fluff and everything and just stripped it down, and it's pretty much him with the guitar. And it's really, really good. I'm going to have to take Conor Oberst.
This would be the first album that Oberst has recorded just under his own name, his first solo work. And it differs from his work with Desperacidos, The Faint, with Bright Eyes, in that it's a lot less theatrical. The melodies are more rootsy, very simple. In fact, the first song, Cape Canaveral, kind of sets the tone for the rest of the album, where the lyrics kind of take center stage, and the melodies propel things, but kind of fade into the background. And it works. I think it actually, the lyrics match up really, really nicely with the simple melodies. I think it's one of his strongest collections of songs that he's put out in a long time. So I'm definitely going to take it.
Up next is The Faint with Fascination, out August 5th on Blank Wave.
And speaking of Conor Oberst, he was actually a member of The Faint back when they first started out, before he was kicked out. Presumably for going to Mexico? I don't know.
This Faint album is based around despair and world conflict, and how the Faint do this is by taking their instruments and stretching them out as far as they can go, so it's not even recognizable. While this is cool, it's kind of a little too far, and I also think this is the weakest songwriting that the Faint's ever had. Is it a fun disco-type romp? Sure. Is it something you're going to listen to your headphones all the time when you're sitting in your living room? Probably not. I'm going to have to heave the Faint. Alright, let me guess. The Faint use keyboards, and it might make your hips gyrate a little, so I'm guessing you don't like this album.
Get out of my head! No, I wouldn't heave anything that makes me gyrate a little bit. No, actually, I did like it. I like things with keyboards. I like that Men in Hats song, where they're dancing around with the keyboards and the Lego things on their head. Or is that Men at Work? What are we talking about? I like this album, is what I'm saying. I didn't think it was, the best album ever, but I liked it.
See, I thought this was their weakest stuff to date, and it kind of wasn't even as good as Media, and Media was an album before they were even The Faint, and were kind of like a straight up indie band, rock band. So
I could see how you could say it's their weakest stuff to date. I mean, I might even agree with that. I don't think it's my favorite album by The Faint, but I still did like it.
See, I thought Wet from Birth, their previous one, was their best one, and then I thought that was weird, and then on this one they were like, let's make it even weirder. It was too weird.
I was really upset with Wet from Birth because it took the title of my forthcoming autobiography. Now I can't use it.
Well.
What are you going to do? Every melody, every chord, every hook on the new album by The Faint kind of feels like it was produced and tweaked and changed in order to achieve maximum effect. But unfortunately, that only really happens about half the time. There's thrash guitars, there's some keyboards and everything, and sometimes they sound kind of natural and exuberant, and other times it sounds a little too overproduced. That being said, the album is still a lot of fun, even when you know where it's going half the time and it's kind of predictable. The band, I should say, is talented enough to make it an enjoyable ride. So it wasn't their best album, but I'm going to take it.
The next album we're going to look at is Inner Party System, out on September 9th on Island Records.
The name Inner Party System actually comes from the George Orwell book 1984, where there was the inner party and the outer party.
While their single Don't Stop has been on the radio for about the past month, the rest of the album gets lost in a clutter of techno beats and hardcore lyrics that probably should have been lost 3 years ago. I'm heaving Inner Party System, but I will say they put on a pretty intense live show. So if you have a chance, go check them out.
The band makes a decent attempt at some socially conscious or socially relevant lyrics, but unfortunately that is all overshadowed by the fact that the music is really glossy and just kind of sounds hollow. If I had to compare them to somebody, it sounds like Linkin Park meets Nine Inch Nails meets Paul Oakenfold, and not in the best way possible. It's music that kind of went out like 3 or 4 years ago, so good try with the lyrics, but I'm going to heave the album.
The last album we're going to look at is The Walkman with You and Me, out August 19th on Gigantic.
You and Me won't actually be released in stores until August 19th, but it's been released online since July 29th, with all the proceeds from the online release going to cancer research.
You and Me is fantastic. Musically, the Walkmen are as tight as ever. And lyrically, Murphy is no longer singing about youth, but more about himself and how he's trying to figure out where he's supposed to go in life. It's very muddy and low, and the lyrics are very introspective. It all comes together very nicely. I'm going to have to take the Walkman.
This set of songs is really subdued for the most part, and so it requires your attention. But if you give it that, you'll see how rewarding the album can be. There are quiet moments mixed in with instances in which there's just like a carnival of sounds, and they're coupled really, really nicely together with the complex songwriting that's kind of become the staple of the Walkman. So I think it's a good album. It requires your attention. If you give it that, you'll really like it. I'm going to take it.
For Conor Oberst, Ryan and I both thought that it was one of the Troubadours' best set of songs. For The Faint, Ryan thought that the album was fun but predictable, while I was bored by the band's new sound. Inner Party System sound went out about 3 years ago, around the same time Ryan's Hollister shirt went out. And as for the Walkman, we both enjoyed the band's complex songwriting. That'll do it for this week's Take It or Heave It. I'm Wes Soltis, this is Ryan Peters.
And we had our question of the day earlier, so here's our fact of the day, and it's a little known fact. Most people don't realize that all the smog at the Beijing Olympics doesn't come from it being an overly industrialized city. It comes from the fact that Wes was trying to cook with his busted George Foreman grill.
And I'm a really shitty cook.
It's true.